The seventh name in the Chronicles took us to the Low Country, to Zeeland in the Netherlands, where the people did the one thing the whole rest of the war spent itself trying to prevent. They let the sea in. We came to hear why from the woman who opened the dikes. Anke de Vries managed the sluices and pumps of a district that sits below the level of the sea. She is 79, precise as a level, and she is known all over the country as the woman who spent 40 years keeping the water out and one afternoon let it in. She talked to us at her window with the map on the table. In the northern light she says she cannot work without. She told it level and measured, stopping to be exact. Exactness, she said, is not coldness. Exactness is how you love a thing you might have to drown. She learned the water young, apprenticed to an old engineer at the sluices. The land here is a bargain with the pumps, below the sea, all of it, kept dry by machines that never stop. Cut the power, and in a week the fields are a sea again. For her whole career, the flood was the nightmare, the thing every drill prepared for. Then the war came, and the nightmare became the plan, and she had to learn to reach for her worst fear on purpose. They came down the causeways from the drowned cities of the north, along the raised roads, toward the dry farmland. A polder has no walls worth the name, she said. A polder is a garden kept dry by machines. But a polder is built for one thing above all, to go under, on command, and come back. So she gave the district 3 days. There was no panic. There was a schedule. Everyone to the high ground, the church towers, the old mounds, the dike crests. The Dutch, she said, have been preparing to be flooded for 800 years. When the order came, they did it like a thing rehearsed. Then she went to the sluice her grandfather had installed, the gate that existed to keep the sea out, and put her hands on the wheel that opens it. She stood there a long time. I was about to reach for the oldest fear in the country, she said, on purpose, with my own 2 hands. She turned the wheel, she let in the sea. The hardest act of her life, every cell in her body trained for 40 years to turn it the other way. She made her hands do it, and stood, and watched, because if you drown your own country, she said, you owe it the courtesy of watching. In a week, the district was a shallow silver sea, the farms and roads, and the whole grey tide that had come down the causeways, all under a metre of cold North Sea water. The flat land became a mirror from horizon to horizon, the towers and windmills standing out of it like islands. The dead do not drown, she said, but they do not swim either. They kept walking, along the bottom, along the drowned roads, blind and slow, going nowhere. The water did not kill them. The water made them irrelevant. That is the Dutch way of war. You do not defeat your enemy. You make him irrelevant. The living moved by boat, between the towers, above their own fields, above the dead walking the bottom. Children learned to row before the sea gave the land back. Everyone who survived the war, she said, survived it above something. Up. The whole war was up. When one of the dead surfaced in the shallows near a tower, they did not fight it. They poled it, gently, into the deep channels, and let the depth take it toward the sea. The water did the fighting. All they had to do was keep it deep and keep the boats clean. Skin was checked at every ladder, every tower, every boat. No one climbed to safety unseen. The rule was the same everywhere in the world, she said, because a bite is the same everywhere, and a bite you do not catch drowns a whole tower, even in a country made of water. Then the flood froze, shallow water on flat land in a northern winter, and the drowned country became a rink with something under the glass. The dead locked in the ice, visible through it, motionless. And the Dutch, she said, can all skate. It is nearly a birthright. That winter they cleared the deep roads for good, on skates and sledges, before the thaw could free what was frozen, fire on the ice, smoke over the frozen land for a month, and the woman who opened the gate skated it with everyone else, because that is what it is to hold the wheel. She kept the book, every sluice reading, every level, every gate, every name that did not reach a tower in time, in her own hand, by candlelight all winter. The drowning was a decision, she said, and the decision must be written down. Otherwise it becomes a disaster. And it was not a disaster. Whole families lived 2 years in the bell chambers and attics. Vertical villages, the way the Lagos roofs became a vertical city, the way everyone in the war went up and waited above the danger. What kept the towers sane, she said, was belief in the depth. They believed the water was deep. It was. It held. When the world was safe, she closed the sluices and started the pumps, and turned the wheel the way her hands had always wanted to turn it. That turning was the easiest act of her life. She wept, she said, and the pumps ran, and the land came up out of the sea, green and sour and alive. The soil came back sour with salt, and took 3 seasons to sweeten. The farmers plowed the salt out the way they had plowed the sea out for 800 years, patiently, winning slowly, the way the Dutch always win, by outlasting the water. A field you can plow, she said, is a field that is not walking. The old sluice wheel stands on the dike now, upright, with names cut into the rim, the ones who did not reach the towers in the 3 days she gave them. The wheel that drowned the district is the wheel that kept it dry. She will not let anyone pretend they are different wheels. She reads the names every year on the day she opens the winter gates, because the opening that killed and the opening that saves are the same gesture, the same wheel, the same hands. She turns it both ways. She keeps the record. She reads the names. That is what it is to hold the wheel. They teach the flooding in school now, not as a horror, as hydrology. The children build little polders, drown little roads, pump them dry again, laughing, and learn how a metre of water makes a slow enemy irrelevant. 3 days, she tells them. It is always 3 days. Write it down. We asked whether she was a hero. She considered it exactly the way she considers a water level. No, she said. A hero fights. I made the enemy irrelevant. To fight the sea is to lose, eventually, always. To make the sea your ally, that is not heroism. That is hydrology. That is knowing which fear to trust. She still dreams the flooded country, not as a nightmare, as the beautiful thing it was. The land become a mirror. The towers become islands. The northern light lying on the water. The country was lovelier drowned than dry. That is true. She drowned it to save it. Also true. She holds both. A decision watched all the way through, she said, from the opening to the draining, is a decision you can live with. It is the ones you look away from that become nightmares. She looked at all of it. She sleeps, she said. Not well, but she sleeps. She aims, she said, at accuracy, not peace. The land is dry again, green and flat and kept dry by pumps that never stop. And the war is a thing the grandparents did and the children learn as hydrology. The sea does not retire, she said, and neither, therefore, can she. Someone must always know which fear to trust. The pumps run day and night, as they always have, holding the bargain, and she still walks the dike to listen to them, because to her they sound like the country breathing. Remember the pumps, she told us? The way the engineer in Lagos said, remember the barrels. The pumps are the true story. The 3 lines reached the low country on the shipping radio, and someone painted them on a windmill, in Dutch and in English, near the wheel. If you can fight, fight. If you cannot fight, climb. If you cannot climb, float. She read them and found them true and incomplete in a very Dutch way. There is a 4th thing, she said, that the water tank never wrote. She smiled her precise smile. If you cannot float, pump. Take the water you fear and put it to work, and drain it out again when you are done. Pump. It is 800 years in a single word. The tropics floated, the islands rang, the cold countries waited, and the low countries pumped, took the sea, the oldest enemy, made it a weapon, and pumped it out again on schedule. Not fighting, not fleeing, managing. It will never make a song, she said, but it kept the country. She trains the ones who will hold the wheel after her. Know your country, she tells them, better than you know anything. Know which fear is false and which is true. And when the moment comes, turn the wheel and watch the water come, and do not look away and write it down. She knows now that the same thing happened everywhere. A doctor in the flood, a driver in the winter, a diver in the sea, an engineer on the roofs, all of them arriving alone at the same understanding. Every country has a sea, she said. The trick is knowing your sea is your friend. She rolled the map exactly and put it in its place, the way the driver kept his fire and the diver kept her breath, each of them, at the end, tending the small tool of their trade. Exactness is not coldness, she said. It is how you love a country you might have to drown. This has been the seventh testimony. A waterboard engineer who spent 40 years keeping the sea out and one afternoon let it in, who drowned her country to make a slow enemy irrelevant, drained it back on her own schedule, kept the record, and read the names on the wheel every year. The polder lies green and level to the horizon, the canals ruled straight as ledger lines, the windmills turning slowly against a luminous sky. It is hard to stand there and believe the water ever came in. That is the point, she said. The proof of the work is that you cannot see it. At the winter gates, she let us watch her turn the wheel. The same iron wheel, the same hands, opening the sea gates she once opened in war, now on schedule for the season, for the land. Her hands turned it easily. Both ways, she said. You must always be able to turn it both ways. Dawn on the polder is a Vermeer morning, pearl light, a mirror canal, cattle in the mist, the pumps humming somewhere below the wind. An ordinary morning in a country that is only dry because somebody, somewhere, is awake and keeping it so. That is the whole of it, she said. Pump. We left her at her window in the northern light, with the map rolled and the ledger squared, the woman who knew which fear to trust and had the nerve to watch the water come. If you ever hold a wheel like hers, she said, turn it exactly, and write it down. The traveller cycled the Dyke road east at first light, the polder a silver mirror on either side, and went on toward the 8th name in the Chronicles. 3 days, a metre of water, know which fear to trust. This has been the Wanderers Chronicles. If you can fight, fight.